Hi. So kind of going off what you've been talking about, kind of like awkwardness compared to creepiness, right? Talking about kind of the behavior, kind of like more shy, quieter people do. Let's kind of maybe go into, since you tend to talk a lot about like being that energy monster, being more kind of like a little bit more extroverted. Is there any way you can kind of use maybe being a little bit more on the introverted side, more that quiet side to your advantage, that like an extrovert couldn't use to their advantage?
Yes. Uh, so one of the best things you can do if you're naturally introverted is learn how to ask good questions. And what I mean by this is no interview questions. Because if you're introverted, that's fine. It means that you're probably less interested in talking and more interested in listening. You're still interested in meeting people, right?
Mhm.
Okay, everyone's favorite topic to talk about is themselves. Now, if you learn how to ask good questions, not interview questions, but good, interesting questions, then you can really get somebody going and you can have a great conversation where you're only having to contribute 5 to 10% of it.
Right.
Uh,
I think
yeah,
some it's important to note here, and I like that you brought this up, is don't ask too many questions. You don't want to be the question master.
right.
I knew this guy who would bombarded a friend of mine with like a million questions, and it just annoyed her, and then it creeped her out. And like Jack said, introverted is a guy who just listens, a person who just likes to listen more. And what are some good questions to ask, Jack?
So one of the best things you can do now, this issue with like asking a million questions, chances are those are weird ass interview questions, or they are just inane, stupid shit. Like, hey, what do you prefer, Skittles or Starbursts? Oh, what about pancakes or waffles? Right? Like, who gives a fuck, man? Unless it's
Yeah.
leading somewhere, it doesn't. It's don't fucking do that. But if you ask a question, like if you say something like, "Tell me about the worst coworker you've ever had," right? Okay, well that's interesting because everybody's had a bad coworker at some point. And so they're going to
Mhm.
tell you these stories about, man, I was working with this guy, Jack. He was so fucking weird. All right, whatever. Then one of the things you can do, this is going to make your question last longer. It's going to make you seem much more in tune with what's going on. And it's going to really, really get her going. Is you need to learn to say, that must have been adjective to go through that. Or uh, so how did it make you feel when something, right? Those two questions will 10x the length of any answer that somebody gives you, because it makes it feel like, first of all, you're really listening, you're paying attention. Second, you're empathizing with them a lot, and third, you really want to know more about them, their inner workings, what's going on, and they'll be happy to tell you all about it. Now, obviously, don't just repeat that ad nauseum, right? Like whenever she says, "Oh, well, it made me feel like shit because the guy did it. Oh, well, how did that make you feel when he did it?" Fucking hell, right? You don't want to be a psychologist, or a psychiatrist rather, but you want to kind of give them a lot of space to run with the conversation, and then you can always come in with something similar after she's finished. Say, it's funny that you mentioned people wearing weird ass hats. It reminds me of this time I was down in Mexico, and this motherfucker, he walked around the whole week just in this black hat with blue flowers painted on it. What a fucking crazy dude, right? And okay, sure. And you can bring something up, and then, oh, you've been to Mexico. That's cool. Where did you go? You do things like that that kind of lead the conversation. One thing links to another, and you don't have to contribute all that much as an introvert to make a conversation really stretch out and to make it feel good.
Yeah, I feel like another good question to ask, aside from the obvious interviewee like questions like "What do you do?" blah blah blah. You could ask, "Have you traveled recently?" You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that just and people over there in Korea, they tend to be pretty well traveled. So when they answer, "Oh yeah, I just came from the Philippines or Thailand, or I was just in the U.S." And then you just go from there. Oh, how did you like it? I've been there. Oh, you were just in California? I'm from California. Blah, blah, blah. And they just keep going, just get the ball rolling. And then just get them to talk about their experiences of what they like, what they didn't like. You just be, oh, yeah. People who go surfing for the first time in Huntington Beach, they always, they drink more water than they do surf, because they suck at it. Things like that. You just kind of go with it and learn how to ask more interesting questions than anything else as an introvert.
Yeah. And the more you practice this, the conversation bit, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, because you'll try things and you'll find if they work or not. So one of my favorites is if I have no opinion or a negative opinion about where somebody is from, then I'll give them something like, I'll just give a total mischaracterization of the place they're from. So for example, when I first met Rich and he said, oh yeah, I'm from England. And I said, oh, I've heard of that. That's the weird little island just north of France, right? And it's like, what a weird ass way to talk about England. The little island north of France. I mean, technically, yeah, but like, that's weird. Okay. It distracts from the fact that, one, I've never been there. And two, I don't have a particularly positive view of England. So instead of saying, wow, rains a lot, huh? Like, oh, okay, well, that's fucking boring. Oh, how do you like your toast sandwiches? But, like to take things in a different direction, in an unexpected direction, with little lines and little tricks and stuff that you practice and then you try, that will help to make the conversation more interesting, help you stand out a little bit, even without having to be a full-on energy monster. I mean, if you think about it, who are some of the most famous introverts, right? Well, I mean, Keanu Reeves is famously an introvert, and surprisingly enough, so is Will Ferrell. Like he's done several interviews where he said, like, personally, like I'm actually a really shy and awkward guy, but whenever they put the camera on, I just do like a caricature version and just pretend that I'm not me, that I'm someone else, and I'm able to act out in these ways that I would never do personally. And you can do things like that. Hell, The Godfather, right? The Godfather was a damn introvert. He just sits there quietly, just letting shit happen, and then just whispering orders here or there, right? You can get a lot done as an introvert that sometimes being an extrovert can make it harder for you. You just have to figure out a way to work with your strengths rather than against them.